My name is Vanessa Clark. I'm 52 years old, and this morning I'm sitting at my dining room table with a split lip and a bruise blooming across my left cheek, like some sick twisted flower. Last night my husband bruised my face with the back of his hand, and I didn't say a word. I just stood there tasting my own blood, feeling the sting spread across my skin like fire. But this morning, when Terrence came downstairs expecting me to cower and submit like I always did, his smile vanished the moment he saw who was sitting at my table. The look on his face, that mixture of confusion and terror, it was almost worth every tear I'd cried in the dark. Before I tell you what happened, if you believe no woman should ever have to endure what I'm about to share, please hit that like button right now and comment below what city you're watching from, because I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know that somewhere out there, someone understands what it's like to love someone so much that you lose yourself completely. Subscribe so you never miss stories like Mine. Stories of women who had to break before they could finally stand up. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. You know the kind of place I'm talking about. Historic district, old row houses with shutters and front porches. Spanish moss hanging from the oak trees like the ghosts of the past. It's beautiful here, almost painfully beautiful. The kind of beauty that hides the ugly things happening behind closed doors. I'm a school librarian, have been for 23 years. I've spent my life surrounded by books, by stories of heroes and villains, of good triumphing over evil. I never thought I'd be living in one of those stories. I never thought I'd be the woman with the split lip trying to figure out how to survive her own husband. Terrence and I have been married for 18 years. 18 years. No children, just us. We used to say we were each other's everything. Turns out, when someone becomes your everything, they can also become your worst nightmare. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me paint you the picture of this morning first, and then I'll take you back to show you how we got here. This morning, my dining room table looked like something out of a magazine. I'm not even exaggerating. I had set it with our wedding china, the set we got as a gift and never used because it was too special. White plates with delicate gold trim, the kind you're afraid to even breathe on. I'd spread out my best white tablecloth, the one with the hand embroidered edges that my grandmother made. She spent months on that tablecloth, every stitch a labor of love. I laid out fresh flowers, gardenias, from my garden. Gardenias, the same flowers I carried on our wedding day. The irony wasn't lost on me. A feast, a southern breakfast that would make any grandmother proud. Cheese grits, with sharp cheddar melted in the way my grandma taught me. Scrambled eggs with cream, fluffy and golden. Thick cut, bacon, crispy on the edges, buttermilk. Biscuits from scratch, tall and flaky. The tops brushed with butter, so they gleamed. There was fresh fruit sliced, cantaloupe, and strawberries arranged on a platter. Coffee brewing in my Quezon art coffee maker. That's stainless steel. One I bought myself last Christmas, because Terrence said it was a waste of money. The smell filled the entire house. Butter and coffee and something else. Resolve. Determination. The smell of a woman who'd finally had enough. I sat at the head of the table, my back straight, my hands folded in my lap. I was wearing my navy dress, the simple one I wore to my mother's funeral 3 years ago, my grandmother's pearl earrings in my ears, my hair pulled back. I looked at myself in the hall mirror before I sat down, and I barely recognized the woman staring back At me. The bruise on my cheek was dark. Purple now, spreading from my cheekbone down to my jaw. My lip was swollen, split right down the middle where it had caught on my tooth when his hand connected. I looked like a warrior who'd been through battle. And in a way I was. I heard him upstairs, the shower, running his phone alarm going off, that same annoying beep he'd been using for 15 years. I sat there, and I waited. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. But my hands were steady. After everything, after all the fear and the tears and the shame, my hands were finally steady. At 8:05, I heard his footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, confident footsteps. The footsteps of a man who thought he'd won. He walked into the dining room wearing his weekend clothes, a polo shirt and khakis. His hair is still damp from the shower. He looked at the table, and I watched his face. First there was confusion. His eyebrows came together, and he looked from the food to me and back to the food. Then his eyes landed on my face, on the bruise he'd put there on my split lip. And you know what he did? He smiled. Not a smile of regret or shame, a smile of satisfaction, a smile that said, "Finally, I got through to you." He pulled out his chair and sat down, like he was a king surveying his kingdom. He reached for a biscuit, picked it up, examined it like it was some kind of trophy. He took a bite, and I watched him chew, watched the crumbs fall from his mouth onto my grandmother's tablecloth, and then he said it, the words that confirmed everything I'd suspected about who he'd become. "You finally learned, huh?" His voice was casual, almost cheerful. "A little discipline. And look, you remember how to be a wife." He laughed. Actually laughed. "This is how it should have been all along, baby. You just needed to understand who's in charge." I didn't say anything. I just watched him eat my biscuit, watched him lean back in his chair with that self-satisfied smirk. He had no idea that the floor was about to drop out from under him. No idea that the woman sitting across from him wasn't the same woman he'd slapped the night before. And then at exactly 8:12, the doorbell rang. That simple sound, ding-dong, cut through the morning air like a knife. I watched his face change. The smile faltered, his jaw tightened. "Who the hell is that?" He put the biscuit down, irritation flooding his features. "I told you I didn't want company on the weekend. Vanessa, who did you invite?" Without asking me, I stood up slowly, deliberately. I smoothed my dress with my hands, and I looked him right in the eyes. "I invited them," I said. My voice was calm, cold, "and you're going to sit there and wait." I walked to the front door. Every step felt like I was walking toward my freedom. I could feel his eyes on my back, could sense his confusion turning into something else. Anxiety, maybe. Fear. Good. It was about time he felt what I'd been feeling for 3 years. I opened the door, and there they were. Detective Lisa Hartwell in her uniform, her badge catching the morning light. Pastor Jerome in his black clergy shirt and white collar, his face serious and sad, and my sister Denise, tears already streaming down her face, her hand clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. They looked at my face, at the bruise, at my split lip, and I saw the flash of rage in all their eyes. But they didn't say anything. They just followed me into the dining room. When Terrence saw them walk in, I swear to God, all the color drained from his face. He went from brown to gray in the span of a heartbeat. The biscuit he was holding fell from his hand, hit the china plate with a soft clink, and then rolled onto the table, crumbling into pieces. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at me, And for the first time in 3 years, I saw fear in his
eyes.
real, genuine fear. Vanessa, he finally managed to say, his voice strangled.
What?
What is this? What's going on? I didn't sit back down.
I
Stayed standing, my hands at my sides, facing him across the table.
Pastor.
Jerome and Denise stood to my right. Detective Hartwell stood to my left, her hand resting casually on her belt near her handcuffs. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone in that room. This, I said, my voice steady and cold,
Is the
consequence you've been running from for 3 years, Terrence. This is the reckoning. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. To really understand how we got to this moment, to understand why I did what I did, you need to know our
story.
You need to know who Terrence used to be and what he became. You need
To know that I didn't always have a
split lip.
I didn't always flinch when
He raised his voice. There was a time when his voice was the sweetest sound in the world to me. In my kitchen, there's this digital photo frame sitting on the counter next to the coffee maker.
my
Niece gave it to me for Christmas 2 years ago. It cycles through pictures automatically, a constant slideshow of
the past.
And this morning, while I was cooking that breakfast, while I was preparing for the most important day of my life, those pictures kept flashing
By
Each one was like a knife to the heart. The first picture that came up was from our wedding day. God, we looked so young. I was 34. He was 36. I was wearing a cream-colored dress, simple and elegant, holding a bouquet of gardenias. Terrence was in a sharp gray suit, and the smile on his face, it was genuine, pure joy. We were standing outside Bethlehem Church, the church we'd attended together for years, the church where we'd met at a book discussion group. The sun was shining, and behind us you could see all our friends and family. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's so happy for us. I remember that day like it was yesterday.
I
Remember thinking I was the luckiest woman in the world. The next picture was from about 10 years ago. Terrence was receiving an award, Teacher of the Year, for Charleston County. He was a high school history teacher, and he was brilliant at it. The kids loved him.
he
Had this way of making history come alive, of making them care about people who died hundreds of years ago. In the picture, he's holding this plaque, and his smile is so proud. He's wearing his favorite tie, the one with the tiny books printed on it. I'm standing next to him in the picture, my arm around his waist, looking up at him like he hung the moon, because to me he did.
he was
Everything I admired. Smart, compassionate, dedicated. He used to quote Frederick Douglass to his students. He'd come home and tell me stories about the kids, about the ones who were struggling, and how he was helping them.
he cared.
God, he cared so much. Another picture flashed up. This one was from a charity gala about 8 years ago. We were both on the planning committee. Terrence was on the school board, and I was running a literacy program for underprivileged kids. In the picture, we're dressed up, me in a black evening
Gown, him in a tuxedo.
We're dancing. His hand is on the small of my back, and we're both laughing at something.
I
Can't remember what it was anymore, but I remember the feeling. I remember feeling safe, cherished, loved.
That's
The word.
loved.
We had a good life.
A
Really good life. This row house in the historic district. We bought it together 15 years ago. It needed work, but we fixed it up room by room. Terrence refinished the hardwood floors himself. I painted every wall, chose every
curtain.
We had Friday date nights at this little seafood restaurant on the water. He'd leave love notes for me, little scraps of paper tucked into my lunch bag. Have a beautiful day, my
queen.
That's what he used to call me, his queen. I'm telling you all this because I need you to understand.
I
Didn't marry a monster. I married a good man who became a monster, and that transformation, watching it happen day
by day. It was the most painful thing
I've ever experienced. Worse than the bruise on my face, worse than the split lip. Watching someone you love disappear and be replaced by someone you fear. That's a special kind of hell.
The
Change started 3 years ago. 3 years. That's when everything fell apart. That's when the man I married started dying and someone else started taking
his place.
It started with an accusation. A female student, a senior, 17 years old. She accused Terrence of inappropriate contact.
Said he touched
her inappropriately during a tutoring session after school. The accusation hit our lives like a bomb. One day, everything was normal, and the next day, Terrence was suspended pending an investigation. I knew it wasn't true. God, I knew it. Terrence would never, ever do something like that.
He was
investigated thoroughly. The school, board, the police, everyone looked into
it.
And after 2 months of hell, 2 months of rumors and whispers and sidelong glances at the grocery store, the case was dismissed. Completely
dismissed.
They found evidence that she'd made it up. Text messages to her friends about how she was mad at him for giving her a failing grade on a paper, about how she was going to make him pay. The girl was expelled. The case was
closed.
Terrence was reinstated, but the damage was done. You know how it is. Once the accusation is out there, it doesn't matter if it's proven false. People remember the accusation. They don't remember the exoneration. Parents started pulling their kids from his classes. Colleagues who used to eat lunch with him suddenly had other plans. The school board quietly asked him to step down from his position. For the good of the district, they said, to let things settle down. He was moved to a different school across town from the school he taught at for 15 years, where he knew everyone, where he was respected and loved, to a school where he was just that teacher with the accusation. It didn't matter that he was innocent. The stain was there. His reputation, the thing he'd built his entire adult life on, was destroyed.
And
I watched him break under the weight of
it.
At first, I thought he'd bounce back. Terrence was strong.
He was
resilient. But the drinking started about a month after he returned to teaching. Just a glass of bourbon at night to help him sleep, he said.
Then
it was 2 glasses. Then it was half the bottle. He'd come home from school and go straight to the liquor cabinet. Wouldn't even change his clothes first. Just pour himself a glass, down it, pour another. And the anger started. Not at first. At first, he was just sad, defeated. He'd sit on the couch with his drink and stare at nothing. But then the sadness turned sour. It curdled into something ugly. And that ugliness needed a target. That target was me. It started small. So small, I barely noticed it was happening. Little comments. If you'd been more vocal during the investigation, maybe people would believe me now. You're so quiet at church. People probably think you have doubts about me, too. You could have defended me better. It was always my fault. Not the girl who lied. Not the school board who abandoned him. My fault. Because I didn't do enough.
Because I
wasn't enough. Then he started controlling things. Small things.
At
first, he took over the finances, said I was spending too much, that we needed to be more careful. He took my debit card and gave me an allowance. $40 a week for groceries, and whatever else I needed. When I protested, he said I was being
Selfish.
said he was the one working full-time, that his salary was bigger than mine, that he should be the one managing the money. And God help me, I let him because I thought it was just stress. I thought once he adjusted to the new school, once time passed, he'd go back to being the man I married.
He
Started isolating me from my friends. Anytime I wanted to go out, he'd make
comments.
going to spread gossip about me with your friends. Bet they all think I'm guilty just like everyone else.
It
Was easier to just stay home, easier to avoid the confrontation. So I stopped going to book clubs,
stopped having
coffee with Lisa from church, stopped calling my sister as much. I shrank my world down to just him and me because it was the only way to keep some semblance
of peace.
About 2 years ago, the first real incident happened. I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday evening.
I'd
Made dinner, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, his favorite. He came home late, already half drunk, sat down at the table without saying a word. I tried to make conversation, asked him how his day was. He just grunted. I asked if the food was okay. He looked at me with these cold eyes and said, "It's dry.
The meatloaf is dry.
You can't even cook anymore, can you?"
I said I was sorry.
That I'd make something else if he wanted. And that's when he picked up his plate and threw it, not at me, at the
wall.
The plate shattered. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes slid down the wall and onto the floor. Gravy everywhere.
He
Looked at the mess, then looked at me and said, "Clean it up." Then he walked upstairs to the bedroom. I stood there, frozen for I don't know how long. Then I got the paper towels and I cleaned it
up.
I scrubbed the wall until the gravy stain was gone. I picked up every piece of broken plate and I told myself it was the alcohol. It was the stress.
It
wasn't him. It wasn't the man I married. But it happened again and again.
Not
every day. Not even every week, but often enough that I started living on eggshells. I learned to read his moods from the sound of his car door closing. When he got home, a soft close meant he was in an okay mood.
A slam meant I
needed to make myself scarce. I learned which topics to avoid. Don't mention the old school. Don't mention the accusation. Don't ask about his day if he looked tired. Don't breathe too loud. About 18 months ago, it got physical for the first time. Well, not hitting.
Not
yet, but close. We were arguing about money. I'd gotten my hair done without asking him first. Used $45 from my own paycheck. He saw the receipt and lost his mind. Started yelling about how I was selfish, how I didn't respect him, how I was just like everyone else who'd betrayed him. I tried to walk away.
I
said I didn't want to fight. He grabbed my arm, grabbed it hard, his fingers digging into my flesh, and he pulled me back. "Don't you walk away from me when I'm talking to you," he hissed. His face was inches from mine, and I could smell the bourbon on his breath. "You don't get to walk away." He held my arm for what felt like forever, but was probably just seconds. When he let go, there were red marks, finger-shaped marks that turned into bruises the next day. 5 little bruises, one for each finger. I wore long sleeves for a week.
Told Lisa at
the library I was cold in Charleston in
July.
That night I almost left.
I
packed a bag. I had it sitting on the bed, and I was putting my toiletries in it when Terrence came into the bedroom. He looked at the bag, and something like panic crossed his face. Not anger. Panic. He fell to his knees. Actually, fell to his knees in front of me, and he started crying, sobbing, saying he was Sorry that he didn't know what had come over him, that it would never happen again. He wrapped his arms around my waist and buried his face in my stomach and cried like a child. And God, forgive me. I unpacked the bag. I held him while he cried. I stroked his hair. And I told him it was okay, that we'd get through this together, that I forgave him. Because that's what wives do, right? That's what love is, right? Standing by your partner when things get hard. That's what I'd been taught. That's what I believed. But it did happen again. Of course it did, because I'd shown him that there were no real consequences. He could hurt me and I'd forgive him. He could scare me and I'd
Stay.
So the boundaries kept moving.
He
Grabbed me again, harder the next time. Shoved me once, not hard, but enough that I stumbled. And each time there'd be tears and apologies and promises.
and
Each time I'd believe him, because I wanted to believe him, because I needed to believe that somewhere inside this angry, bitter man was the man I'd married. The verbal abuse got worse. He'd mock me. School librarian.
he'd sneer.
Such an important job, reading to brats all day. At least I used to do something that mattered. He'd compare me to other women. Women who were more supportive of their husbands. Women who knew how to keep their mouths shut. Women who were actually attractive.
That
Last one hurt more than I want to admit. I started avoiding mirrors. Started wearing baggier clothes. I felt myself getting smaller in every sense of the word. About a year ago, I tried to leave. Again. I'd found an apartment listing.
a
Small one-bedroom on the other side of
town.
I went to look at it during my lunch break. It was tiny, just 400 square ft, but it had big windows and it was quiet. I could picture myself there, sitting in the morning light with a cup of tea, not worrying about what mood my husband would be in, not jumping at the sound of a door closing. I filled out an application. That night, Terrence found the application in my purse. I don't know what he was looking for in there, but he found it. He was standing in the bedroom doorway when I came out of the shower, holding the paper in his hand. His face was red, his jaw clenched.
What?
Is this? His voice was dangerously
Quiet.
I wrapped my robe tighter around myself. Terrence, I can't do this
Anymore.
I think we need some space. Space? He said the word like it was poison. You want space from your husband? After everything I've been through, after everything I've lost, you want to abandon me, too? I'm not abandoning you, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I just think we both need time to figure things out. Maybe if we. You're not leaving. He stepped into the room. You're not going anywhere. Vanessa, you're my wife.
You made a vow.
For better or worse. And just because things got worse.
If you think you can.
Run. Terrence, please. Where are you going to go? He was advancing on me now, and I was backing up until my back hit the wall. Who's going to believe you? Over me? What are you going to tell people? That your husband is mean to you. Sometimes that he raised his voice.
Boo-hoo.
He was inches from my face now. You're not leaving. You belong here. You belong to me. Do you understand?
I couldn't speak.
I just nodded, and he turned and walked out, taking the application with him. I heard him rip it up in the kitchen, heard the pieces hit the trash can, and I sat on the edge of
The bed.
and I realized something terrible. I realized that I was trapped, that I'd waited too long, that the man who used to leave me love notes now thought of me as property, as something he owned. The months after that were the darkest of my life. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, and tried to be invisible. I stopped smiling, stopped laughing. I felt like a ghost in my own
House.
My sister Denise, who I used to talk to every week, she started asking questions. V, are you okay?
You sound.
Different. Is everything all right with Terrence?
And I'd lie.
Tell her. Everything was fine. Just tired from
Work.
just getting older. She didn't push, but I could hear the doubt in her
Voice.
Lisa, my friend from book club, she tried to reach out too.
She's a
Detective with Charleston PD and she has good instincts.
She saw me at the
Grocery store about 6 months ago and I was wearing a turtleneck in September. She looked at me, really looked at me, and asked if I was okay. I lied to her,
two.
said I was fighting off a cold, didn't want to get a chill. She gave me her card, told me to call her if I ever needed anything. I put the card in my wallet and tried to forget about it, but I couldn't forget because things kept getting worse. Terrence stopped even pretending to be sorry when he'd grab me, or shove me or back me into a corner. There were no more tears, no more apologies, just cold silence like it was normal, like this was just what our
Marriage was now. And I started to
believe it. Started to think that maybe this was what I deserved, that maybe I had failed him so completely that his anger was justified. 3 months ago, he started coming home later and later, smelling not just of bourbon, but of cigarettes too. Even though he'd quit smoking 10 years ago, he'd stumble in at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'd be lying in bed pretending to be asleep, listening to him crash into things downstairs. He'd come up, get into bed without showering, and pass out.
the
Whole bedroom would smell like alcohol and smoke and something else.
rage. If
Rage had a smell, that's what it would
be
Last month, I stopped sleeping in our bed. I started sleeping in the guest room. Told him my back hurt, that the firmer mattress helped. He didn't even
argue.
I don't think he cared. I think he was relieved not to have to look at
Me.
and honestly, I was relieved not to have to lie next to him, wondering if tonight would be the night he did more than grab me, wondering if tonight would be the night it went too far. And then came last night, the night that everything broke wide open. The night I finally saw the truth with perfect clarity. I'd been in the kitchen, making tea. It was late, almost midnight. I couldn't sleep. Anxiety gnawing at my stomach. I was wearing my robe, that burgundy silk one my sister gave me for Christmas 3 years ago.
It's
Beautiful, really, with embroidered flowers on the sleeves. I remember thinking how strange it was that I was wearing something so pretty while feeling so ugly inside. I was standing at the counter waiting for the kettle to boil when I heard his car in the
driveway.
The engine cut off, then silence. I held my breath, listening. The car door opened, then slammed shut.
Hard.
My stomach dropped. A hard slam was never good. I heard his keys in the lock. Heard him miss the keyhole a few times before he got it in. The door opened, and I could tell from the way he was walking that he was very drunk, more drunk than usual. He came into the kitchen, and the smell hit me first. Bourbon and cigarettes and sweat.
His
shirt was untucked. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked at me, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Something darker than anger. Something almost like hatred. He didn't say anything at first, just walked over to the counter and saw the envelope sitting there. The envelope I'd printed out that morning, an application for an apartment, a different one, a cheaper one I could afford on just my
salary.
I'd printed it out and left it
there.
Too tired to hide it. Too tired to keep pretending. Maybe part of me wanted him to find it. Maybe part of me wanted to force the confrontation.
He
Picked up the envelope, looked inside, and I watched his face change from confusion to understanding to pure rage. He pulled out the application, stared at.
it
What the hell is this? His voice was
low.
dangerous. Tara and I started, but he
Cut me off.
What the hell is this? Vanessa? Louder now. An apartment. Application. You're trying to leave me. Again. I can't do this anymore, I said. My voice was shaking. But I made myself.
Say it.
I can't live like this. I can't. Keep walking on eggshells.
Can't keep.
Being afraid in my own home.
I'm
Leaving. Terrence, I'm done. The words hung in the air between us.
for a
Second, I thought maybe he'd let me go. Maybe he'd realize that we destroyed each other, that there was nothing left
to save.
But then his face twisted and he tore the application in half, then in half again and again. He kept ripping until it was just confetti in his hands.
And he threw the pieces at me. They
Fluttered down like snow. You're not going anywhere, he said, and his voice
was ice.
I've told you this before. Vanessa, you're mine. You don't get to
Leave.
You don't get to abandon me like everyone else did. I'm not abandoning you, I said, and I could hear the desperation in my own voice. I'm trying to save myself.
Can't you see what's
Happened to us?
Can't you see that we're
Destroying each other? No, he said, stepping toward me. You're destroying
me
you and everyone else. My career is
gone?
My reputation is gone. And now you want to take the one thing I have left. My wife, my home. Terrence, please.
I
Held up my hands, trying to plate him, trying to calm him down, but he grabbed my shoulders. His fingers dug in hard, painfully hard, and he shook me. You're not leaving, he shouted right in my
face.
I could feel his spit hit my
Cheek.
Do you hear me? You're not leaving.
You're hurting me.
I gasped, trying to pull away. Terrence, stop. You're hurting me. But he didn't stop. He shook me harder, and my head snapped back and forth. I felt dizzy, disoriented. I tried to pull his hands off me, but he was so much stronger. When I finally managed to jerk away from him, I stumbled backward.
My hip hit the
Edge of the counter and pain shot through my side. Look what you made me do, he said, breathing hard. This is your fault. If you just stay in line, if you just be a good wife, none of this would happen. I am a good wife, I said, and tears were streaming down my
face.
Now I've stood by you through everything, through the accusation, through your anger, through the drinking. I've taken your rage and your cruelty, and I've stayed. But I can't anymore. I can't. You're killing me, Terrence. Can't you see that?
You're
Killing who I am. And that's when he did.
it.
That's when he crossed the line that couldn't be uncrossed. His hand came up, and for a split second I thought he was
Going to grab me again.
but his hand
Kept going.
it came across my face,
The
back of his hand connecting with my cheek with a crack that sounded like thunder in the quiet kitchen. The force of it turned my head to the side. My lip caught on my tooth and split open.
I
Tasted blood instantly, metallic and
warm.
the pain was sharp and immediate, spreading across my face like fire.
But
Worse than the physical pain was the realization he'd done it. After 3 years of pushing boundaries, of grabbing and shoving and backing me into corners, he'd finally hit me in the face.
like I
Was nothing, like I was less than nothing. I stood there, my hand coming up to my mouth, feeling the blood on my fingers. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me. This wasn't Terrence. This wasn't my husband. This was a stranger who looked like him, but had none of his soul left.
He was
Breathing hard, staring at his own hand, like he couldn't believe what it had.
done.
But he didn't apologize. He didn't cry or fall to his knees like he had those other times. He just looked at me, and his face was cold, empty.
Clean.
Yourself up, he said. You're bleeding. On the floor. Then he turned and walked.
Out.
Walked out like he just commented on the weather, like he hadn't just shattered everything we'd ever been.
I
Heard him go upstairs, heard the bedroom door close, and I stood there in the kitchen, blood dripping from my lip onto my beautiful burgundy robe, and I felt something inside me break. But it wasn't
my spirit.
it was the chains I'd been wearing for 3 years, the chains of hope that he'd change, the chains of fear that I couldn't survive without him,
The
chains of believing that love meant enduring everything. Those chains broke, and what was left was clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror.
the
Woman staring back at me had a swollen lip, blood on her chin, and a bruise already forming on her cheek. But her eyes were different. They were
awake.
I washed my face with cold water. The water stung my split lip, but I welcomed the pain.
It was proof that I
Was still alive, still here. I pressed a cold cloth to my mouth until the bleeding stopped. Then I went back to the kitchen and I made a decision.
The
Decision that would change everything.
I
Wasn't going to call the police right
then.
I wasn't going to pack a bag and run to my sister's house because I knew Terrence. He'd twist it.
He'd say it was
An accident. He'd cry and apologize and promise to change. And if I left right, then in the middle of the night without proof, without witnesses, it would just be my word against his. And his word, despite everything, still carried weight. In this community, he was the teacher who'd been falsely accused,
he was the
victim of a lying teenager.
people felt
Sorry for him. They'd say I was exaggerating, that I was being dramatic, that marriages have rough patches.
no
Needed to do this differently. I needed to do it in a way that couldn't be denied or explained away. I needed witnesses. I needed proof. I needed to make sure that when he tried to claim I was overreacting, there would be people who'd seen my face, who'd heard the truth from my own mouth, who couldn't be swayed by his tears or his charm.
So I
Started planning, right there at midnight with a split lip and a bruising cheek standing in my kitchen. I planned his downfall, and mine too in a way, because I knew that doing this would mean the end of my marriage, the end of the life I'd built, the end of the woman I'd been for 18 years. But that woman was already dead. She died when his hand connected with her face. What I was doing now was building something new. From the ashes, the first thing I did was take out my phone. My hands were shaking, but I made myself dial.
I
Called my sister Denise first. She lives in Atlanta, 3 hours away. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, her voice thick with sleep. What's wrong? It's midnight. And I told her. God, I told her everything about the drinking, the anger, the control, the fear, about the grabbing and shoving,
and tonight
about the slap. My voice was remarkably steady as I talked, like I was telling her about someone else's life.
she
Didn't interrupt, just listened with these little gasps and sobs.
when I
Finished, there was silence. Then she said, I'm coming. I'm getting in my car. Right now. No, I said.
not now. Come
In the morning. I need you here at 8 o'clock.
a.m. Can you do that? What are you
Planning?
justice? I said.
I'm planning. Justice. Will you be here? I'll be
There.
she said. I'll leave at 5 o'clock. I'll be there. The second call was harder. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Pastor Jerome's number. He'd married us. He'd counseled us through rough patches before things got really bad. He was a good man, a kind man, a man who believed in the sanctity of marriage, but also in the sanctity of human life. I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. Sister Vanessa, is everything all right? No, Pastor, I said. Everything is not all right. I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen.
Can you do that?
Of course, sister. And I told him too. Not everything. Not all 3 years, but enough. About Terrence's anger. About his drinking, about tonight, about the bruise on my face and the split lip. And the realization that if I didn't do something, there might come a night when I didn't walk away. When I finished, Pastor Jerome was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What do you need from me, Sister Vanessa? I need you to come to my house tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock
a.m.
I need you to be a witness. I need you to see what he's done, and I need you to stand with me when I do what I have
To do.
I'll be there," he said without hesitation. "I'll be there, and I'll bring the weight of our faith community with
Me.
You're not alone, sister. You've never been alone." The third call was to Lisa, Detective Lisa Hartwell, my friend from book club who I'd been avoiding for months. I pulled her card out of my wallet where I'd kept it all this time. I dialed the number. It rang and rang, and I thought she might not answer, but then she did. "Hardwell. Lisa, it's Vanessa. Vanessa Clark."
There was a pause.
"Vanessa, it's late. What's wrong?" "Everything," I said, and I told her to. Everything. And Lisa, being a cop, being trained for this, she went into professional mode immediately. "Where is he now?" "Asleep upstairs." "Are you safe right now? Do I need to send a car?"
I'm
"Safe for now, but I need you to come tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. I'm going to confront him with witnesses, and then I'm going to file charges. But I need you there, Vanessa. I should come now.
I
Should arrest him now."
No, I said.
Firmly. "This is my house, my life, and I need to do this my way. Please, Lisa. Trust me," she sighed. 8 a.m. I'll be
There.
But if anything happens before, then you call 911 immediately. Promise."
Me.
"I promise." After I hung up, I looked at the clock. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I had 7 hours until they'd
Arrive.
7 hours to prepare. 7 hours to transform this house from my prison into my courtroom. I started cooking. I know it sounds strange, but I needed something to do, something to keep my hands busy and my mind focused.
And
There was something symbolic about it.
2.
For 3 years, I'd cooked meals that he'd criticized or ignored or tonight thrown against the wall. But this meal, this breakfast would be different. This would be the last meal I ever cooked for him, and it would be perfect. I took out my Lac Cruet Dutch oven.
It was a
Wedding gift. This beautiful red, enameled cast iron pot that we'd received from Terrence's aunt. We'd barely used it because it was so nice. Too nice for everyday cooking. But nothing about today was going to be everyday. I made cheese grits from scratch, the kind my grandmother used to make with sharp white cheddar stirred in at the end until it was creamy and rich. While the grit simmered, I made biscuits. Real buttermilk biscuits.
cut out with my
Grandmother's old biscuit cutter. The tin one that's been in my family for generations. I used my KitchenAid mixer, the red one I'd bought myself for Christmas last year when Terrence said It was too expensive. I'd used my own money. Money I'd hidden away in small amounts over months. I made the dough, rolled it out, cut the biscuits, and put them in the oven. The smell of them baking filled the house. Butter and buttermilk and hope. While the biscuits baked, I made bacon, thick cut bacon, the expensive kind. I laid each strip carefully in my cast iron skillet and listened to them sizzle. I scrambled eggs with cream the way my mother taught
Me.
I sliced fresh fruit, arranged it on a platter. I programmed my Cuisinart coffee maker to brew at 7:45. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be ready. At around 3 a.m., I thought about the bruise on my face.
I
Went to my bathroom and looked at my makeup drawer. I have this concealer, Dermablend Heavy Duty Coverage. I bought it online for $40 after seeing an ad.
It
Promised to cover anything. I'd been using it to cover the fingerprint bruises on my arms when I wore short sleeves. I took it out, held it in my
hand.
I could cover the bruise on my
Face.
I could hide what he'd done, make it easier for him, make it less shocking for the people coming. Then I threw it in the trash. The whole tube, $40. Wasted. Because no more hiding.
No.
More making it easier for him. No more protecting him from the consequences of his actions. They needed to see.
Pastor.
Jerome needed to see. Lisa needed to
See.
My sister needed to see.
And
Terrence, most of all, Terrence needed to see what he'd done in the cold light of day with no alcohol to blur it. No anger to justify it. Just the plain, undeniable truth written on my face. Around 4 a.m., I did something else. Something I'd been planning for weeks, but hadn't had the courage to do.
I'd
Ordered a Ring doorbell camera online. It had arrived a week ago, still in the box in my closet. I got it out, read the instructions, and installed it. It took me longer than it should have because I'm not great with technology, but I figured it out. I mounted it next to the front door, downloaded the app on my
phone and connected it.
From now on, everything that happened at my front door would be recorded. Every conversation, every confrontation. I couldn't change the past, but I could document the future. I also set up my iPad on the bookshelf in the dining room, angled so it would record the table hidden behind some books, but recording. I needed proof. I needed evidence in case he tried to claim later that I was lying, that I was exaggerating. I'd have video. I'd have witnesses. I'd have everything I needed. By 5 a.m., the house was starting to wake up. The sky outside was turning from black to dark blue. I set the table with our wedding china, the plates we'd gotten as a gift and kept in the cabinet because they were too special.
Well,
This was special. This was the most important breakfast of my entire life.
I
Spread out my grandmother's tablecloth, the white one with the hand-embroidered edges, each stitch a labor of love.
I
Wondered what my grandmother would think of what I was doing. She'd been married for 50 years before my grandfather
passed.
but it had been a good marriage, a kind marriage. She would understand.
I
Think she'd be proud. I arranged fresh flowers in the center of the table. Gardenias from my garden. The same flowers from my wedding bouquet.
The
Symbolism wasn't lost on me. These flowers represented promises made and promises broken. Around 6 a.m., I went upstairs to get dressed.